I was gonna save the story that Angela recounted for us for when we hold our first service in our new building, because someone suggested the past 5 years has been like that wilderness moment. The uncertainty that comes with being nomads, the sometimes regret of, maybe we should have stayed in Egypt, aka 175 St. Clair, where we were at least familiar with our challenges. And of course, the all too familiar grumbling of mana, 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 zoom, zoom, zoom. Also, not to compare myself to Moses, since I only had a very teeny tiny role compared to your other spiritual leaders, but I am the one that missed it by that much, to quote from the show Get Smart. Moses never made it to the promised land, but his immediate successor, Joshua, did. So I do want to expand on a couple of things from this story. One is the whole concept of time. The Bible says they were in the wilderness for 40 years, which is likely an exaggeration, like most things in the good book. But I get the point they were trying to make, right? That it took them a generation before they finally got to the promised land, which is a very, very long time. And understandably, people got impatient. A year before the pandemic lockdown, my ex and I went through a kitchen renovation project. Okay, let's face it, I did most of the work while he did most of the opining on what kind of marble or cabinets to get, hence the X part. But we won't get into that sort of detail, and let's not go there. And I'll also spare you the gory details of delays after delays. Fun fact, the cabinet was ordered from a famous brand here in Canada. But I'm not going to blame Canada for that. And let's just say that there were other delays. It wasn't just the cabinets, the contractors who never kept their word, and so on and so forth. At some point during this renovation project, I had to be rushed to urgent care because for the first time in my life, I got an ulcer from being so stressed out. Patience has never made my list of personal virtues. Thank you very much. Being a three on the Enneagram, some of you might know this personality type, right? It describes someone who is a high achiever, driven, and highly motivated. I just want to get things done in as quick and efficient a manner as possible. In some ways, that's a really good trait for an interim minister because we only have a very short time to accomplish at least 5 interim tasks, which, by the way, the Transition Task Force has been so good at helping me prioritize and figure out this year. Thank you, TTF. And sometimes my impatience actually backfires on me because, as Adrienne Marie Brown pointed out, we could only move at the speed of trust. And Adrian probably didn't even recognize the pace at which churches move. It's much faster to swim through a barrel of molasses, by the way, right? And in the case of our building renovation project, it's not even just a tiny kitchen that needed to be renovated, with so many moving parts involved, including an elevator. We're at the mercy of so many forces which are beyond our control. So here we are. Hopefully, our last Sunday in the wilderness, since we already got our conditional occupancy permit. But who knows, right? And we're actually, as Julie pointed out, not meeting in the promised land yet, which must be disappointing for many of you. And I do want to thank you that this, 93 connections showed up for this last Zoom call or Zoom service that we're having, right? And I must tell you the truth, which is that I too am disappointed because I wasn't able to hold my last service there. But you know what? When I applied for this position over a year ago, I was very explicit in asking what my role was with the building renovation project, given the history I just mentioned earlier. And Karen Dunk Green, who was part of that interim minister task force, said very minimal, for which I sighed a great big sigh of relief. And I am so grateful that she's a person of her word because we definitely wouldn't be where we are today without her tireless effort week after week as not only building manager, but capital campaign manager as well. And the illustrious title of the one who made sure the minister did not get another ulcer. So thank you very much, Karen, for all the work in making our occupancy of the renovated new building possible. So anyway, getting back to this whole notion of promised land, the one supposedly overflowing with milk and honey. It's worth noting that there were already occupants in that land that got kicked out. For those of you who went to Sunday school or Hebrew school, you might have recalled the story about the fall of the walls of Jericho and how that came about. To me, to be honest with you, that sounds too much like the MO of settler colonialists, claiming indigenous and First Nation lands as their own. A couple of weeks ago, 16 of us from First U were on a call with CUC staff Camelia Jahan Shahi, organized by our Building Connections with Oakwood Vaughn Group. And there was a very explicit stated desire not to move into our new building as a gentrifying force, and instead wanting to be good neighbors. I believe with some reflection work, by moving forward humbly and mindfully, and by recognizing places where subtle acts of exclusions or microaggressions may take place, if we did all that work, we can possibly move in a way that is respectful of our new neighbors. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the four groups of leaders in this congregation who have gone through the initial parts of an anti-racism training with me to further our own awareness about how we might show up in a super diverse part of Toronto so that when it does become our new spiritual home, all may truly dwell in peaceful coexistence. That way, it could be a promised land for all and not just for some. So here we are, the end of the journey, yet not quite there yet for me, as we mark the end of this particular wilderness journey. How do we even begin to measure the past 11 months? Can we measure it by seemingly mundane details, such as exploring our governance structures or changing our email accounts and virtual folders to a more centralized location? Or can we measure it by our shared worship experiences, bringing in and training new worship leaders and infusing our words of welcome and land acknowledgments with personal touches that incorporate our appreciation for the earth as well as Indigenous people? Or perhaps it could be measured by interactions with those on hospital beds or recovering from surgeries and illnesses, people who have a date with death sooner than they might have realized. Or measured beyond the walls of First U, even to our collaboration with neighborhood UU congregation and other sibling congregations in the GTA, or the Canadian Unitarian Council, or the clergy and colleagues who have supported me all along the way. You know who you are. Some of you are on this service right now. Thank you so much for all that support. At the end of the day, I'd like to measure it by seasons of love, to quote from the musical and movie Rent. You knew I wasn't going to go my last sermon without quoting from a musical, right? And by the immense gratitude I have for this most excellent staff I work with day in and day out. They have such a big heart in serving the First U community, or the collaboration with the executive committee, the transition task force, the board, and all the various program groups within the congregation. It takes all of us to make all of this work, which is actually a great model of interdependence, which, as many of you may have noticed by now, is part of my signature line. First, you have taught me so much this year, and I am so grateful. You have opened your heart to me in such a generous way. I know it didn't quite work out the way we intended it to, and it's not because of a lack of trying or a lack of love, but we did the best we could, and we accomplished some great things together. I know I will be leaving you with joy in my heart because, as Joe Primo pointed out, joy is gratefulness unbound. And I have so much gratefulness for you and so much gratitude in my heart right now. And I hope I get to express that with you in person later this afternoon. So for now, miigwech, merci, thank you for the past year and the season of love we shared together. It has truly been a joy and an honor to be your interim lead minister. I invite us to take a few deep breaths to cherish our past year together.